Number 1. The Mine. I like to explore old mines. It's kind of a thrill for me because I'm mildly claustrophobic. Sounds weird, I know. Why would someone try to explore old mines if they're scared of enclosed places? The thing about that is, I enjoy it because it's a rush. When I was a kid, I got lost in a cave, and although it freaked me out, it also made me feel very alive. But when I began exploring, I chose mines instead of caves because mines are relatively harder to get lost in than a cave is. Generally, I'll travel to the end of the mine, and my heart will be pounding in my chest. And then I'll try to get out as quickly as possible. Each time I swear to myself that I will never go into another mine, but I get the itch to go again, almost immediately. I was going to explore a mine in West Virginia. I won't mention the name of it because technically I had no legal right to be there. I actually had parked my car on the side of the highway and took a pretty big risk in doing that. When there were no cars coming for a while, I jumped the railing and the fence and made my way to the mine. I had done the research to try and find where the mine was online, and I was able to find it pretty quickly. I knew this mine was going to relatively be straight back from the portal, or entrance to the mine. It was also about 1,000 feet deep. So there was a chance that by the time I got to the end of the mine, I wouldn't be able to see the portal anymore. My heart began beating the moment I considered that. Fortunately, although the mine was damp, it wasn't very wet, so I wouldn't have a difficult time. So I entered the mine, my heart beating faster. I had to walk slowly because I didn't want to get surprised and trip or anything. No one knew where I was, and if I got hurt, no one would be able to find me. I turned around about every 50 feet to look around and make sure I could still see the portal. It of course got smaller and smaller, and the further I went into the mine, the more my heart pounded in my ears and in my chest. When I got about halfway deep into the mine, I turned around, and the portal was very far away. It looked very small at 500 feet. The mine was dark. I had a small flashlight to see where I was going, but I didn't want to use it until I absolutely had to. As I mentioned, I did this because I enjoyed the thrill of being scared, and using the flashlight would have kept me from being as scared as I was. As I descended further into the mine, I thought that I heard a sound. It sounded a bit like a giggle. I immediately stopped in my tracks and listened. After a few moments, I decided it was just in my head, so I began to keep walking. About 700 feet into the mine, I thought I heard the giggle again. I again stopped, this time feeling my heart beat in my throat. I turned around and looked at how far I was into the mine. I considered going back but figured it was probably still just my imagination. I wanted to make it further in, so I kept walking. When I got close to the end of the mine, I heard the giggle again. Only thing was, I knew that I heard it that time. It was not my imagination. And this time, it didn't stop. And this time, it was right behind me. I fumbled in my pocket and pulled out my flashlight and turned it on. Turning around, and sitting right in front of me were two little girls in pink dresses, holding their hands over their mouths while they were laughing. They looked at me with eyes that were completely black. One of the girls took her hand away from her mouth and pointed behind me, further into the mine. I dropped my flashlight, which broke, of course, but I didn't care. The laughing didn't stop, even though I couldn't see the girl anymore. I immediately began running out of the mine. The giggling didn't get quieter, though, and I actually thought the little girls were following me. It remained mostly dark until I was almost out of the cave. I didn't look back. I just got out of the mine and ran to my car, which was fortunately where I had left it. That was not my last time in a mine, but I can tell you, it was my last time in that mine. Number 2. Hanging in the closet. Watching one of your videos where a person was talking about hanging out in a closet and listening to creepypasta struck me because I actually do that too. And I once had a very freaky experience when I did. I had to write you about it because it seemed so weird that there are other people who do that like me. Much like the person in the story, I think it's the best way to try and get scared. It's the only place I can go to where it's completely dark. I mean, I once tried putting duct tape over my bedroom window to keep the light out, but that didn't work so well. On this particular night, I was listening in the closet to some good creepypasta and was having a really hard time getting scared. I closed my computer lid and just listened to it that way because I knew it would be totally dark without the monitor on. That really didn't do very much for me though. It kinda sucked. I was hoping that the darkness would really get me scared. It's what the dark is supposed to do. But it didn't. I was still having a good time though. The stories I was listening to were very good. I had been listening to a really long playlist and may have been in the closet for about 3 hours without even getting a little apprehensive. I moved and stood up for a few moments to stretch my legs. It was about 2 in the morning when I was standing up. Right as I leaned against the closet wall, the closet light turned on. The light switch was right outside the closet door, on the left side of it, and I lived alone. That meant that someone had to have flipped the switch, and not only had they flipped the switch, but they had to be standing right outside the closet door. I froze, finally feeling the fear that I wanted to feel, but now regretting that I actually wanted to feel it. I had no idea what to do. I didn't have anything to protect myself with. It was just me and my laptop computer in there. All I could do was stand there in complete fear, expecting at any moment that the door was gonna open. And when it did, I was sure that I was gonna die. And I stood there and watched and waited. No one opened the door. I waited for hours because I was too scared to leave the closet. Finally, when the sun came up, I got the nerve to open the door. I looked around the room, and there was no one in it. Cautiously, I staked out my apartment for an intruder. I didn't find anyone, but I did find my living room window open, with the screen removed. My PS4 and my television were gone, so I was robbed. Someone had come in the house and must have known I was in the closet. Did they scare me because it would have given them time to rob me, knowing I would be too freaked out to explore outside the closet? Or did they think the light was not for the closet and left when they turned it on? I have no idea, but it was the freakiest experience of my life. Keep your windows locked. Number 3. The Cave. When I was about 13 years old, I used to love going to explore out in the hills around my aunt's house. It was fun, and I often found some really interesting things in the woods and hills. One time, I found a cave. Part of me really wanted to go and explore it, but I knew it wouldn't really be a good idea, so I didn't. But when I went home, it began to bother me. I really regretted not exploring that cave. I felt like I was some sort of coward, and I didn't want to feel that way. I wanted to go back and explore the cave. About a month later, I went to stay with my aunt again. This time, I knew that I was going to go and find that cave again and explore it. I brought a flashlight and a snack and some water. I didn't need much because I knew it would probably be a shallow cave and I wouldn't be out very long. After about an hour of exploring, I found the cave again. I should explain what kind of cave it was. It was on the rocky side of a hill, and the entrance to the cave was really short. I would have to get on my belly and push myself under it. Looking at it, I knew it would be an extremely tight fit. My curiosity was really strong though, so I decided to go ahead and go for it. I got down on my belly and slowly began to crawl into the cave. I wasn't sure how deep it was or if it ever got taller. What I was sure about was it was a very dark cave. The entrance was so short that not much light was able to get into it. Well, thank God I brought the flashlight, right? As I was crawling, I became aware of this really odd noise. It was a rustling sound, and it was followed by a strange, shrieking noise that really sent a shiver down my spine. In a bit of a panic, I moved down a bit and moved my foot and got my damn foot wedged in tight between the ceiling and the wall. I groaned out of pain and out of desperation for my stupidity. I tried to pull my foot out, but I was unable to move it because it was throbbing in agony. I cried out a bit, and then I heard the rustling noise again. Well, it was too dark to see anything, so I grabbed for my flashlight. The sound was probably nothing, but I would be scared of it until I knew it was nothing. I managed to get my hand on the flashlight and switched it on, then moved it in the direction of the sound. I saw the worst possible thing. Close to 20 of the scariest looking bats I've ever seen were only a couple yards away from me. They were hanging from the ceiling, and some of them were moving. I screamed and did my best to pull myself free. My leg just throbbed in complete agony as I moved. I don't know what it was, the crying or the flashlight or what, but the bats got restless and a few of them flew right at me. I stupidly but instinctively swatted at them, and two things happened. My leg throbbed in pain, but it pulled loose, and one of the bats bit me as I swatted at it. It felt like I had been jabbed with two sharp and thin needles. I screamed again and tried to pull myself out of the cave. If you've ever seen the movie Terminator, my experience was very similar to Sarah Connor's experience climbing through the machinery at the end. My leg was injured and I was crawling in an area that my body was wedged into. I was also panicked because I was scared of the bats, and I was scared that something bad would happen because I got bit. It took me a long time to crawl out, and I was breathing heavy with fear. I had never felt so claustrophobic before. It took me much longer to get out, and by the time I did, I was hyperventilating. I tried to stand up on my foot, but my leg gave out. I had to crawl again until I was able to get a broken branch on the ground that I could use for a crutch. I was hurting bad, and I was scared that I was probably contracted rabies. I felt super sick, and it took me nearly 3 hours to limp back to my aunt's house. I just knew I had rabies, and I was gonna die. If I had been more educated about bats, I would have known that only 1/2 of 1% of bats actually carry rabies. My feeling of being sick was probably psychosomatic, exacerbated by the fear and anxiety of hurting my foot. But I had to get a rabies shot anyway, which wasn't nearly as bad as people tell you it is. My ankle was fractured, and I had to get a cast. Nowadays, I do not go into caves or other small areas. I am completely claustrophobic, and although more educated about bats, I am still scared shitless of them. Good evening, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by clicking the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please feel free to click the button next to the tabby to be informed of new content. I really hope you enjoyed these stories. They were a bit shorter than what I usually post, but I really enjoyed all 3 of them. I also want to give a shout out to a channel called Aries Leviathan. The reason I mention this is his channel had been dormant for a while, and he just began uploading again. Since I enjoy his channel, I wanted to give him a mention in this video. If you're interested in seeing his channel, I'll include a link in the description. So, all that's left is to warn you to make sure you check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.